So, having told you that story about myself, I want to come on to some of the theory, the work of psychotherapists and psychologists who have attempted to understand what goes on inside the human psyche, why we sometimes have these moments of breakdown or breakthrough, and how we can integrate those darker aspects of our personality into the whole. And this whole topic is often called the shadow. It's a phrase that was coined by Jung, and he produced some pieces of work around the shadow side of our psyche. I actually just want to start with three quotes that I'm going to read to you about the shadow, and then we'll begin to talk about it. So, this is from Richard Rohr. The human ego prefers anything, just about anything, to falling or changing or dying. The ego is that part of you that loves the status quo, even when it's not working. It attaches to past and present and fears the future. Maybe you can recognize some of that in yourself. This is Hermann Hesse. You know quite well, deep within you, that there is only a single magic, a single power, a single salvation, and that is called loving. Well then, love your suffering. Do not resist it. Do not flee from it. It is your aversion that hurts, nothing else. And then this is from Jung himself. Unfortunately, there can be no doubt that man is, on the whole, less good than he imagines himself or wants to be. Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. If an inferiority is conscious, one always has a chance to correct it. But if it is repressed and isolated from consciousness, it never gets corrected. So, hearing that, it is the way of seeing ourselves with mindful compassion, in which we will make the unconscious conscious and integrate it into the whole. So the shadow then is the idea that Jung put forward, that in order, because we are whole, we are people of substance, we have a light side and a dark side, an ego and a shadow. And that as human beings, we always prefer to put our best foot forward. We always prefer to project to others the most acceptable, beautiful, wonderful, up together versions of ourselves that we can conceive of. And that in doing that, in judging some parts of ourselves as good, we create a dualism that we get stuck in, which is that we have by extension judged parts of ourselves as bad. So we have this idea of two sides of a coin, of an ego and a shadow. And this causes us pain. We've talked quite a bit in the last section about self-acceptance and self-rejection. But the contrast between who we would like to be and who we fear that we actually are creates a kind of internal cognitive dissonance, an internal pulling apart. And this creates stress. Not necessarily stress that we know about, but stress that we carry as a weight or as sometimes a feeling of emptiness. And in our stillest moments, when we are away from other things, it can manifest, it can surface as stressful thoughts or feelings or as physical problems. And it's those things that, of course, we are paying attention to on Healthy and Whole. But it also has other problems for us, this shadow, this divisiveness, this way of dualizing ourselves into good or bad. It has other problems for us in relationship with others, because whatever we have said, we've consigned to our shadow and we have tried to deny or hide. Whatever the virtues included in that, we will find problematic in others. So let me give you an example. If, for example, you lie a lot, or there is an element of pretense about your ego parading that you do. If that's the case, you will despise truthfulness in others. You will perceive it as naivety, and you will want to distance yourself from it. You will be unable to embrace truthfulness in other people unless you can fully embrace it in yourself. Or if, for example, you find empathy difficult with other people, if your ego self is quite matter of fact, gets things done, a bit hard-nosed, then you will despise softness in others and think of it as weakness, and it will become distasteful in you. You will miss out on that whole side of yourself and other people because of the rejection subtly of that part of yourself. So I hope you're beginning to see, I hope this is beginning to build up a picture of what holistic, integrous self is actually about. The light and the dark coming together in inclusion and in love, and the openness that that creates both within ourselves, the spaciousness, the fearlessness that that creates, but also the openness in our relationship with others, the intimacy we can have, the joy, the fullness of life we can have by being able to accept and celebrate the whole of life and the whole of the others that we get to be around. Now, there are degrees of this separation, and you may already be becoming aware of some of the internal landscape, some of the things that need integrating in yourself. But it may be that you are not aware at all, and that's okay. What can sometimes happen is that our first instinct is to deny and suppress, but we can also project. And what we can find is that our brain subconsciously projects our shadow self onto others. And that what annoys us most about others, in truth, is what we find most deeply disconcerting about ourselves. It is sometimes the people in our life that we find the most difficult, that have the most to teach us, because they are often a projection of our shadow self. And as an extension to that, we can not only project onto others and mistake what we find difficult about them as what we find difficult about us, but deny altogether. We can find various ways, and our brain can spin up a lot of biases. We can find different ways to entirely ignore that out there that really we should be owning in here. And various forms of delusion, starting with blind spots, but leading right onto a quite pronounced pathology, where we can deny this shadow self for many, many years, decades, even lifetimes. And those moments where we wake up to ourselves, often caused by pain or else caused by great love, are the moments we get to see, perhaps for the first time, some truths that have been hidden, and we get to embrace them. And so I'm going to teach you 4 practices or 4 pathways that you can put into practice right now, wherever you are on your journey with your own shadow, whether it's quite familiar to you and you've done a lot of work on it, or whether this is a brand new concept. You can take yourself further in acknowledging, owning and loving yourself. So we'll move on to that now.